welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. A little bit of a different type of video today. The channel's been going for around kind of 8 or so years now, and every so often I get asked questions about the channel. How do I approach reviews? Do I have any tips? Or asking me specific things about why I rate things a certain way, or why I did like some film and didn't like another. And I often get asked to explain certain things, certain kind of ways I do things. And I've kind of long thought maybe I should do a video which kind of says this. A few people have asked me to give like a tips video, but I've always thought that seemed a little bit self-congratulatory, if that makes sense. And I thought I'm really in no position to do that. So I never really thought about how I could approach such a kind of a video. So what I've done is I've kind of thought about, rather than doing like a tips video, essentially, 'cause I just don't feel like, who am I to give other people tips? There's bigger channels than me, you know, even in the same sort of space. But I kind of wanted to do a video just giving a bit of explainer about how I approach reviews, pitfalls, maybe some ideas, maybe explaining my thoughts on why certain things are like they are, and give maybe potentially some ideas, and pretty much like an all-around kind of explain-o video about kind of how I approach the channel and kind of the reviews within that. I don't know if this will be useful or interesting for anyone. It's probably going to be a bit of a long one because I want to kind of go into some detail, so it's kind of, I can refer to this in future if kind of people do ask me things, and I want to cover a multitude of topics. So we'll kind of crack on. First of all, let's talk about the channel, the evolution of the channel, really. So as I've said, this channel has been going for around 8 years, and I created the channel, but the idea was I always wanted it to be a collaborative venture. I never really wanted it to be just me on my own. It's why I call it Geek Legion of Doom, because it was the whole idea of it was meant to be a kind of an all-encompassing channel with a variety of different opinions and kind of topics. And that was kind of the original mission statement, I suppose, of when I kind of first started the channel. Now, early days, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was kind of just flying with the seat of my pants, to be honest. But that was kind of the genesis, really, of the kind of the idea of what I kind of wanted from the channel. And back then, it was January of 2013. There really wasn't like many channels covering kind of B movies. There's quite a few now, but back in those days, there wasn't. But I never wanted it to specifically be about necessarily B movies, although that's kind of how the channel has turned out, really. I wanted it to have all different facets of kind of geek culture: toys, gaming, comics, books, films, TV shows, and it's kind of, I touch on some of them, but ultimately there's so much content just what I tend to focus on, which is kind of the reviews on ultimately lower budget independent movies. That doesn't give me much time to do much else. So it's kind of ended up being like this. It's ended up being more of a review channel, although I do obviously try to do the odd thing different here and there, collection updates, top 10s, etc. A few other bits here and there. But the idea was always to be, have a multitude of things with different creators. It's why I invite guest reviewers on the channel. And as you know, you've seen probably Paul from Buckaroobanzai and Aaran from Screenstars, both who have been doing reviews for years now for me, and I never put any pressure on them. I never asked these guys to kind of like, come on, crack the whip. These guys can come and go as much as they please and do as little or as much as they want to do. And we've had a few other kind of contributors over the time. Lisa Loves, Madison Mayhem both did a good stint of reviewing. They've kind of obviously dialed it back now. Recently we've had Professional Amateur Hour step up as well recently, and I'm always happy to have more people on board, because I like to have different voices. And I kind of, whenever someone approaches me and says they'd like to do a review, I always kind of send them this pre-written email, basically going through actually a lot of the stuff which we're going to go through now, trying to kind of, so everyone is singing off the kind of the same page about what I think constitutes a kind of a worthwhile review. Certainly in my eyes, this is what I look for in a review, and it's kind of how I want to approach reviews on the channel. But kind of before we get into the reviews themselves and how I approach them, quite often I get asked, you know, why I review certain films, where do I get them from, why specifically B movies. And I've always liked straight to video. I was a big fan of, you know, VHS options to go trawling through them back in the day, trying to find kind of cool horror or sci-fi movies that I'd never heard of before, ones with cool cover art. Back then this was pre-internet, so it was just, you know, maybe reading things in magazines or kind of just seeing things out in the wilderness. So, and I used to collect the VHS. I've got rid of them all, but I've always had that kind of interest in kind of the independent genre cinema, and it's kind of always been a bit of a passion, although I have sold a lot of my physical media on now because I just don't have the space to keep all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of always interested me, but I still had DVDs and stuff, so obviously I reviewed kind of a lot of the DVDs that I had, things like that. And then eventually I started getting approached by sometimes film companies, film distribution companies, sometimes directors themselves are actually asking me to review specific films. And then, you know, I've got various kind of PR companies that actually approach me now and offer me screeners. And I think obviously as your channel grows, you have more kind of clout in the kind of like the space, if that makes sense. So it becomes easier in that way. And to be honest, I get a lot now, and this is why I'm very thankful for the contributors who do help with the channel, because I simply couldn't do it all on my own. I do work full time, this is not what I do for a living. Barrett, trust me, I get a bit of money from this, but it's pocket money. But so obviously I work full time, I have a social life outside of this as well. So, you know, I'm very thankful of the kind of the space that has been created and the contributors that, you know, take the time to review. And I always approach it like I'm happy for people to promote their own channel or social media, whatever, if they're taking the time to, you know, to help me by doing reviews. I'm quite happy to try and help them as we can. But we'll kind of come on to that again. Okay, so lesson number one, I would say for myself, early on, again, we're going to touch on this. Be willing to take criticism. This is my first kind of, I guess, if you would have called it advice, be willing to take criticism. And we're going to come on to some examples of why that is. Because, you know, when you start out on stuff like YouTube, it's an evolution, as I've said. Your style tends to grow. Mine certainly did. My kind of style tended to grow. You become better at kind of, you know, communicating to a camera, and the way you do things changes, and sometimes that comes from criticism. So criticism, don't necessarily take it to heart, I would say, because it can be helpful. My main job, I've worked as a sales manager for the last kind of 20 years, and I take criticism from peers, you know, and things like that. I give criticism to other people, and it's not meant to be knocking them down. It's meant to be so they can improve. So just keep that in mind when if you're thinking about a channel or you're getting criticism. It's not necessarily to look at it in a negative point of view. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my approach of how I kind of set up a review. This is kind of how I do it now. Again, this has been an evolution. So you would have noticed I do play clips on most of my reviews, and we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the legalities of that. So you will know that there is a thing called the fair use policy. If you're using clips to do a review, it is considered journalism, and you are allowed to use certain clips for an educational purpose. It can't ruin the property. You can't kind of reveal necessarily big plot points, things like this. It can't spoil the property, and it has to be of a certain length and things like that. I tend not to go over a 10-second length of a clip, and I only ever use about a minute's footage overall. Generally speaking, what I'll do is I'll download a trailer. I'll just kind of like rip it from YouTube and kind of like and then sort of use that, or sometimes I'll get clips that sent to me, things like this. So there's, that's how I use it, but there are legalities. So just don't overuse them, but you don't be afraid to use them, because ultimately YouTube is a visual medium. You want to have something interesting to look at, which is why I think you can benefit, rather than just having a talking head at you the whole time, is to kind of just pepper it with a little bit of kind of other media, clips, pictures, things like that. I used to even do little facts. That just took a little bit too long. I used to do little facts and budgets and stuff in the text. So whatever you want to do, I just think it makes it more of an interesting experience for anyone that's kind of watching it, because there's so many talking heads on YouTube as you're watching right now. So if you can kind of like spice up the visuals a little bit, then you should. So the other thing, I just have a little bit of a clip at the beginning. It's a little bit of a kind of like introduction to the film, and then I'll have an intro. A lot of people don't have intros at all, and I think this can be a good idea. And again, we're talking about criticism. One of the critiques I have was my intro was too long, a while ago, and it was 16 seconds, my intro. So someone said to me, "Your intro's too long," and I was like, rather than kind of like getting all defensive about it, I thought, is it? Could I cut it down? Would it make a lot of difference? So I did cut it down. So I used to have, how I edit things, I used to have like 3 little blocks. I have the, kind of like the music, I have title card, then I used to have horror movie review. So I took that one out. So I just have the title card and then the kind of like the Geek Legion of Doom intro. And I got it down to about 11 seconds. So I listened to even though I didn't think 60 seconds was a whole big lot of time, it was a critique that I thought, do you know what, maybe I should take that on board. So I did, and I changed it. Again, this is just how I personally approach it. I'm not telling anyone else to do this. If you want to do it your own way, you do it your way. This is just how I've approached this channel. So then we kind of go into how I like to structure reviews, is I like to give a synopsis, I like to give positives, and then negatives, then kind of like my conclusion, and then the score. So the synopsis, again, this is something that was brought up in an earlier video, that I was talking too much about the synopsis. And again, it was a negative comment, but I thought, do you know what? He's right, this guy who commented. And I thought, because if you haven't seen the film, you don't want me to spoil it. You don't want me to go through the whole plot with you. You just want a brief synopsis. Conversely, if you have seen the film, you don't need me to kind of like go over it again, because you've already seen it. So I like to give a brief synopsis in case someone hasn't really seen the film, because a lot of the films that I review are B-movies, so they tend not to have a lot of press. So I do think it is to give a snapshot of kind of maybe what the story is about, but without going into any detail. A 30 to 60 second synopsis, I would say. That's kind of how I really approach it, just to give a flavour of the story without revealing anything kind of too much about it at all. And then I go into my positives and negatives. Sometimes I'll mix up, sometimes with negatives first, and this is kind of the meat of the bones of the actual review. And kind of, when you're looking at low budget films, this is going to go when you're breaking down a film, one of the kind of, and we're going to come on to this again, one of the things I don't like is, oh, that's crap, or that's great. To me, that's not helpful. I like to give constructive reasons why it does or does not work. And just saying things are good or bad is not helpful in my opinion. But when you're looking at a film as well, I think you have to look at the product as a whole. I mean, there are hundreds of people that work in a film, and let's say you are watching a film that is bad, just not a good film. It's very easy to say this is not a good film, but realistically, if you've got to look at this film and think, just by saying this film is bad, and I'll give you an example. I reviewed one recently called Cosmic Sin, which was a Bruce Willis kind of science fiction movie. And we all know that Bruce Willis is just kind of like in it for paychecks now. And this movie got absolutely ripped apart critically. But I watched this film, and yes, it's not a good film, but there are elements in this movie that I think were well done. So by saying, oh, it's a bad film, you are saying that every single department in this movie has failed. They have failed what they are doing. Makeup, costumes, set design, lighting, editing, all of that constitutes the film. And by saying just a film is flat out and out bad, you are basically saying that every kind of aspect of the film is bad. Just maybe because Bruce Willis wasn't very good in it, or it had shitty effects, or maybe the story wasn't particularly good. Mention those things, but I think, again, this is how I approach it. When I'm looking at a film, I'm breaking down the things that I think work, then versus the things that I don't. But I have to, I'm looking at the pieces that make up the whole. So even, for example, if a film has got terrible acting, but it's got an intriguing plot, or something like that, it gets those points. So you're kind of levelling out this kind of score. So when I'm going through my positives and negatives, if let's say some of the acting is not very good, okay, is it the whole cast? Is it one particular member of the cast? Again, just by saying the acting isn't very good, by saying that you are essentially saying all of the cast are not very good at acting. But is that the case, or is it just a couple of the performers that are kind of bringing down your view of the acting? But is it really fair to say the acting isn't bad? It's a blanket statement when you might want to say some of the cast, the main lead of the cast, something like that. I try these days maybe not to point out specific people. I learned once because I singled out this child actor in a particular review that was particularly not good performance, and then the mother was like emailing me going, can you please take down the review? I thought, do you know what, I won't take down the review, but I will learn from it and kind of if it's a bigger actor I feel less guilty about it, to be fair, but I'll try to be a bit more kind of not pointing people out, especially if it's a poor performance. If it's a great performance, obviously, then I'll applaud them. But again, it's looking at things like this. It's looking at breaking down those kind of categories. If we say, oh, it's got crappy effects, do we mean practical effects, or are we talking CGI? Again, it's just kind of like, to me, it's not a case of just saying it's a bunch of crap or it wasn't very good. Because I've seen plenty of examples of the CGI effects might have been poor, but the practical effects have been good. So it's unfair of me to say the effects are bad, because I'm lumping those two departments in on the same thing. So to me, that's kind of how I approach both positives and negatives, is I like to be constructive. And if I do have to say something on the negative side, I don't like to, again, use destructive behaviour. There's three types of criticism. A little life lesson for you now. So there's constructive criticism, which is ultimately what you want. So let me give you this. There's constructive, non-constructive, and destructive criticism. So constructive criticism might be, so let's talk about the acting. The lead performer's acting was a little bit stilted, didn't feel particular kind of confident. Maybe they could have done a few more takes, something along that. I was getting the impression that maybe there was not a lot of takes that were done. That's kind of going into a little bit more context about why necessarily you might think the acting on this instance wasn't particularly good. Non-constructive is the acting wasn't very good. It kind of tells you, but you're not really going into any type of kind of detail about it. It's just kind of really, it doesn't really help. And then destructive will just be going, oh, that's crap. The acting was crap. And that's just kind of like being inflammatory, really, for no real reason. So when I watch a review, the reviews I like to watch are ones that have constructive criticism, because I like to understand where people are coming from. Some of the best reviewers that I like are ones that approach reviews with that kind of mindset. Now, I'm not saying that is the best review. It's a lot down at his personal preference, and I'll use some big examples. So Jeremy Johns is a well-known YouTuber, but I don't particularly care for his reviews, because for me, he's more interested in kind of doing like comedy hijinks and kind of like little bits. And I'm not saying that doesn't have its place, but it's just not for me. it's not kind of, I don't get much from it. I like having reviews that kind of delve a little bit deeper, and even if I don't necessarily agree with the reviewer, when I'm watching a review, I'm not looking for them to have the same opinion as me. I'm looking for them to explain why they have their opinion. A good example of this would be Grace Randolph, who does the Beyond the Trailer. She famously didn't like Guardians of the Galaxy, Gravity, Frozen, but she did like Batman vs Superman and Justice League. Now, I disagree with her reviews on that one, but at least she enunciated why it is she has those opinions, which to me makes her reviews, at least in my opinion, better. So that's how I would approach both positive and negative criticism. And again, I'm not saying that other people should do this. It's just my opinion of how I like to approach it. And for me at least, that's what works. I personally feel it's the fairest way and the most interesting. But I like a serious kind of take on, you know, every little bit, kind of a few jokes here and there. But I'm not. If I want to watch a comedy sketch, I'll watch a comedy sketch. You know, if I'm watching a review on something, I want to learn the nuts and bolts about this critics' view on what worked or what didn't work in this particular kind of subject. Okay, what else have we got? How I approach a score. Again, some reviewers don't even have a score. I like to, because for me it's like a snapshot of kind of where the movie is. Now I do an easy 1 to 10. I think 1 to 5 isn't kind of big enough, and if you're going to do like 2.5, why don't you just do 10, because you know you're basically giving that number anyway. Now, to me, I used to work in the video game industry, and I remember reviews on games, and when I used to work there, when the games used to come out, people used to review them, and people used to consider reviews that got under 70% as poor reviews. It never really made sense to me why that was, because surely if we're saying that the score is 1 to 10, the middle is 5, which to me is average. So to me, 5 is not a bad score necessarily. It's just average. It's just, you know, generic. It's unimpressive, but it's not necessarily bad. And again, that's how I score things. And as I've said to you, when I'm kind of like doing review, I'm totting up all the kind of the positives and negatives in my mind. And sometimes when I'm even filming a review, I might not necessarily have a score in my head at that time. It would just kind of be maybe an idea, and then kind of at the end of it, once I've kind of said it out loud, I can think, do you know what, I'm going to give it this. So there's been a few times where I've gone into a review thinking I'd give it 1 score, but when I've kind of said it all out loud, I thought, do you know what, that was either better or not as good as I initially kind of thought before I had kind of verbalised it all. So to me, again, I like to have a simple, easy way. It's why I put the graphic on there with the kind of like the actual what it says. So 5 is an average. 10 is here's another question I always get asked. I never give like really high reviews, right? I've seen that comment loads of times. And no, that's true, I don't. But like a 10 out of 10 is a perfect film. That to me, if you give a film a 10 out of 10, there's nothing you can say about it that's negative. I can probably think of less films than I can say on my hand that I would give a 10 out of 10 for. Like, I'll give you one. So Jaws, to me, is a movie where I could not think of a critique. The only critique I would say of it is that it's kind of aged a little bit now, but that's not the film's fault, that's just the age, that's time's fault. So to me, that's a 10 out of 10 film. Because I honestly can't think of what I would say on the negative for that film, to be honest with the outsider. I think it's, the effects haven't aged particularly well. So a 10 out of 10 is perfect. I don't think I've ever given a 10 out of 10, to be honest with you, because it would be such a rare occurrence where a film is literally beyond reproach. And therefore, a 9 out of 10 is almost perfect. An 8 out of 10, which I have given a few, but they are rare, I will admit, is extremely good. And then 7 out of 10 is a particularly good film, but maybe would have some, critiques. So even a 6 out of 10 is an above average film for me. So that is how I approach my own scoring system. Again, people will have different scores, some will have no scores. But that's how I kind of look at it, is kind of like, if one has no redeeming features, or 0, no redeeming features, 10 has no, it can't be touched, then 5 is your average. And that's kind of how I go through it. I've kind of already touched upon this, but I will say again, when we're watching films that would be considered bad, there are elements that could work in that film. It is worth kind of repeating, because, like I said, like there might be certain things in a review, and it's easier. And again, I'll use that Cosmic Sin as an example. Every review I've seen of that just trashed it. And I gave it, I think, either a 4 or a 5 out of 10, I can't remember. And yeah, it wasn't a good film, but there certainly was like some okay special effects in that film. I thought some of the kind of the costuming was alright. The production value was okay for a low budget film. Things like this. There are things that you can say positive about the majority of bad films, at least some things. There's been very few films, The Hospital 2013, that I had literally nothing good to say about it whatsoever. The Hospital 2013 comes to mind, just saying. Yeah, but again, it's just worth kind of repeating on that one. So the next thing I want to talk about is quality or quantity. What's kind of more important? This is a question that maybe only the person creating the video can answer. Now, I put a lot of videos out. I'm very prolific. We do a lot of kind of like reviews on the channel. And I toyed with the idea of doing more scripted reviews at one point. Now, when I do a review, I'll have some notes, but I don't script it out. Paul, who does reviews from the channel, does script his reviews out. But people who contribute, I just let them do how they want to do it. But I don't. I might have some pointers, but for the most part, it's kind of like a little bit just free form speech. I did try once to do a completely scripted review and have it all kind of like with graphics and stuff like that, and it was pretty fun, and I thought it turned out well, but it just took so much longer to do. And if I were to do all reviews like that, I simply wouldn't get round to doing all the films that I have done. So I like to have some production in it. I like to edit kind of clips in, pictures, things like that. Have the intros, things like that. But even kind of cutting out some of the ahs, when I'm doing that sometimes, I just leave in. And it's just my choice to do that. Again, that is a personal preference. It makes my videos seem less polished. I don't have kind of like green screen backgrounds. I don't know how to do that, to be fair, but I could find out, I suppose, if I wanted. But to me, it's just kind of like, I'd rather be able to have a huge library of films because I'm a big fan of low budget kind of genre movies, and I had a huge collection when I had VHS, and I had a huge collection when I had them on DVD. So to me, I feel like doing kind of reviews more often, but maybe not quite as polished as some. I feel like they're all my little babies, These are my little babies. They're my little reviews out there of certain films, so I can kind of go, oh yeah, I reviewed that one. So that's just kind of how I approach it. So, would I like my reviews to be more polished and have a little bit more kind of production value on it? Yes. But it would ultimately mean I would not be able to get round to reviewing as many films. I'd pretty much put out a video a day, sometimes 2. And I wouldn't have to do it if kind of like I was kind of like spend more time on editing and things like that. It's a personal choice. It probably means I get less views on certain videos than maybe I would have, but I get it because there's more videos in total. It's tit for tat, really. Okay, so dealing with negative comments versus troll comments. To me, these are two different things. And I think people could learn from this, to be honest. I don't want to be this like, Leo has tips, but you can. I've given you some examples of where people have said negative comments. They weren't rude. They weren't necessarily having a go at me personally. they said some kind of, you know, negative things about the video, but I took that on board and, in my opinion, use that to make better videos. So if you are a person online who is making YouTube videos, don't necessarily always kind of like look at negative comments as necessarily bad. Yes, if they get horrible in person, and we'll talk about troll comments in a minute, but if someone says something which could be conceived as negative, they didn't like the video, a lot of times it's kind of like, I don't agree with your review, or some of the examples that I've kind of given. That's not, to me, that's fine. You know, I don't mind that, and I actually kind of find it interesting. I like to understand people's different point of views. One of the first things I do when I film a review, and pretty much once I've kind of filmed it, I like to then see what other people think. And it's kind of how I've got to know a lot of people on YouTube. In actual fact, I'll review a film, wonder what anyone else thinks. So I go and check out, you know, put in the film I've just reviewed or whatever, see what else has been and said, and I'm not chatting. It's how I've got to know Paul. It's how I've got to know Aaron, Lisa, you know, pretty much anyone else. And you know, so it can be. They don't have to agree with me. And I find, like I say, that there have been times where I found it helpful. But then we look at troll comments, which are a different thing to me. A troll comment is where someone is just being just mean for whatever reason to try and get a reaction. What advice would I say about troll comments? Expect them. If you're going to put yourself online, you could be a Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Chris Hemsworth lookalike, or like me. It doesn't matter. Some bastard's going to go, you're an ugly git at some point. Someone's going to say something disparaging about you. I mean, I don't want to kind of go through it because I don't want to kind of like list off my troll comments. But trust me, I get all sorts. You know, normally it's about my weight, my accent, the fact I don't have a lot of hair. Things like this. It's obviously, it is what it is. Do you know what? If it's sometimes I'll make a funny troll comment and I'll leave it. That's kind of funny. At least you've got some creativity. I did used to kind of engage with people sometimes. I don't do it anymore. I just kind of, if it's something which I think is particularly nasty, then I'll probably just delete it. The worst troll comment I ever had was not a video that I did, it was a video that Lisa did. And luckily the algorithm caught that it was a nasty comment, so it got held for review. But my God, it was really vile. And I thought, God, what possesses people to say this to someone? And it's the keyboard warriors hiding behind a computer. But my advice is, expect it. I do see some reviewers kind of like take snapshots and put them on Twitter and stuff. To me, I don't like doing that because it almost, you were kind of admitting it affects you in that way, if that makes sense. Well, just whatever. If it's kind of like, if it's something which is particularly kind of mean, I'll delete it. If it's kind of like somewhat mean or funny, I might even leave it because it still helps the algorithm, to be honest. But I don't know if I would personally, I never have, like, screenshotted, and I don't do it with positives ones either, to be honest with you. It's just kind of like my choice. I think if you kind of like making a big hoopla, like you're almost kind of like, someone said something mean about me, I need some positive reinforcement, and it's kind of like, you're kind of showing that it's affected you. Maybe that's not a bad thing, but to me it's just not something I choose to do. But yeah, just whatever, just let it kind of, I mean, if you're really kind of like worried about it, you can kind of put certain phrases and things like that will kind of filter them out, but it's going to happen. It doesn't matter what you are doing. Don't take it personally. Everyone going to get troll comments, and kind of, if you can laugh about them, great. What is a little more awkward, I will admit this, is when you get comments from people involved with the film, especially when you haven't been, all that positive about the film. That I will admit is more awkward than with an actual troll comments, because it's like, oh God, that's really awkward now. Especially if you again, my early reviews, I would maybe pull out someone that I thought was a particularly bad performance and say, this person was no good. And they've commented, I'm thinking, oh my God, now I feel like, now I've got to deal with this comment. So my experience with dealing with I have made, again, it's positive and negative. I've actually made friends with people from the film industry through YouTube. I've been invited to be in films a few times. I've been invited to go, stay in LA, things like this, hang out with them, do all sorts, I've got, sometimes longer lasting relationships with people from the film industry. So it has been very positive at times, and even again, not just for me, like Paul, for example, we interviewed James Pax, who was from Big Trouble in Little China, and me and Paul did the interview, and Paul actually did co-write a script with him for an upcoming film. So again, there's opportunities there. But these things take time. Negative comments are a little more awkward. Sometimes filmmakers are quite gracious, and again, if you're trying to be constructive with any criticism, they're more likely to be more gracious about especially if you've been positive as well about certain things, and you have explained your points why you don't think certain things are maybe worked. I feel, generally speaking, most filmmakers tend to be sometimes happy for the criticism. Generally speaking, honestly, I have had filmmakers say, sorry I didn't like the film, but do you know what, I've taken on board what you've said. I think, do you know what, if that is true, I don't know if it is, that's what they just said there, maybe the next decision that they make may have been affected by that. And then I feel like, so the next film, maybe they'll just consider what I said, that maybe make a better film. Yes, there have been one or two examples where filmmakers have got angry with me, and yes, it's very awkward, but you just try and be as polite as you can with them. Only on one occasion, actually maybe two occasions, I've really ended up getting in a bit of a barney with a filmmaker. It's a little awkward, I won't lie, but it's kind of rare, considering I've done a few thousand reviews now. Collaborating with others. So as my channel grew, every channel starts off at 0 subscribers. We're at nearly 20,000 now, and it's a reasonable number for me. And there's channels that are bigger than me. There's channels that are smaller than me. Every channel starts off at 0. Every channel then gets to 100 subscribers. So I see a lot of people going, oh, I'm only on 100 subscribers. Every channel has had 100 subscribers at one point. So don't let that bother you. If you're putting out content and you're you'll pay notice of what works, keep on doing what you're doing, and eventually that will grow. Don't get too hung up on the numbers, is what I'm saying. Yes, there are benefits as you get bigger. The bigger the channel you get, the quicker you end up getting, the more subscribers you'll get per month and things like this. Then also opportunities will present themselves. The bigger the channel, especially with review channels, the more clout you have in the industry. When I actually get to 20,000, I'm hoping I might be able to get Rotten Tomatoes certified. Actually, need to be 20,000 or more for that. So we'll see, and then you'll grow from there. But it is a journey, And I think people get frustrated with sometimes lack of subscribers. But like I've said, at every point, PewDiePie, started off with 0 subscribers at some point. So, if you find something that works, then obviously do more of it, or maybe not. I mean, there's things that I don't do that I know get lots of views. I don't do reactions because to me it's a false thing when people go, oh my god, look at the new Marvel film. It's bullshit, and I don't like to be not honest in my review. I don't like to be have this play acting. I did one or two reactions, and I did a Hellraiser one, and it was just me going, you know, it's kind of like, it doesn't, for me, I'm not willing to kind of put on a front and pretend I'm kind of freaking out about certain things. But I know that those things get lots of views, but I don't want to do it because it's just not what I want. I'd rather I want to do what I want. It might mean I get, you know, less views, less subscribers because of it, but I'm doing what I want to do with it. So again, you can do things that maybe will get you kind of more views, that maybe kind of, you know, it's completely up to you. I'm not saying don't do that again. It's just my choice. I'd rather have a steady kind of growth, but doing things the way I kind of want to do them, rather than kind of like, you know, doing stuff which I know will get more views or subscribers that I feel a little bit is disingenuous. That is just me. I'm not critiquing anyone if that's what they want to do. But yeah, anyway, collaborating with others is kind of, I just wanted to touch on that again. So, you know, why should you collaborate with others? So as my channel has grown, I have approached other YouTubers. Good example is Aaran. Paulus, although he doesn't tend to make that many videos anymore. But Aaran, when I first started talking to him, Aaran from Screenstars, he was on a couple of hundred subscribers, and I think he might have done a review or two. And I said to him, I approached him, I watched this review and I kind of liked it. And I said, would you be interested in doing some reviews for my channel? You'll get to see films, because at that point he probably wasn't getting screeners, I don't think. So you'll get to see a film that you haven't, it's not out yet. You know, you might get comments on the DVD case, and I'm happy for you for doing this to promote your own channel, to help you grow. And that's what happens, you know. So Aaran is now just past 5,000. He hasn't been doing YouTube as long as I have, so he probably will get to where I am in a few years. He's on the same trajectory. He just hasn't been doing it quite as long. That's why, you know, that's kind of the only real reason why, you know, my channel is nearly at 20,000. His is on 5,000. It's not because, you know, his content's any better. He's just early on in his kind of YouTube career, so to speak. But he'll get there. And I like to think, you know, if I can have a part in someone else's channel growing, then I feel good about it. I think I've seen too many channels go the other route of slagging other channels off. I've never slagged a channel off we are going to touch upon this again. Some people just think this is a good way to go. I disagree. You know, if you don't like a channel, just don't have anything to do with them, is my opinion. For me, I like to kind of work with people. I like having lots of different opinions. You know, I like having different voices. Some people might like my reviews better. Some people might like Paul's reviews better. Some people might like Aaron's reviews better. I don't know. But I like to have different flavours, you know, of that. And I think, again, if you're growing as a channel, it can't hurt to reach out to other channels and say, do you want to collaborate? And maybe I'll do something. If I ask you to do something for me, you can ask me to do something for you. It honestly, it will help. It's probably the best bit of advice in this video. Okay. Promoting your video. Yes, so once you've made your video, I'll be honest with you, I don't tend to do this now. I used to kind of go on Facebook and go into kind of like movie groups and just post my reviews, and I still see people do that. I don't do that anymore. I just can't be bothered, if I'm honest. But it is a good way to get more exposure. You know, I'm a bit of a grumpy old man. I don't like social media in a lot of ways. So when I first, I had Facebook, and I had the Geek Legion to do like page, but I didn't really do much with it, to be honest. I still don't. Anyway, again, because this is going to come back to taking criticism, and this was actually from a film company. A film company says to me, why haven't you got a Twitter account? And I was like, I'm against it. I have bloody social media, you know. Get a Twitter account, and then so I did. I didn't really understand it first of all, and then I kind of got the hang of Twitter, if you know what I mean. And to me, Twitter I personally prefer it than Facebook in regards to the channel, because you can kind of tag people's, the people who are involved in the film, and sometimes they'll kind of comment on it, and they'll help share it. I only ever tweet positive reviews though, because if I do a film and there's a negative review, it's on the channel, but I'm not going to kind of go, ha, look, I've slagged your movie off. It's on the channel, but I won't necessarily tweet it. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, tweeting about it is obviously good. There's aggregate review sites. There's one called Critics.io, I think it's called, and you can kind of post your reviews on there, and it's like an aggregate site. Movies and Mania is actually one that shares my videos independently, or some of my videos at least. So you'll get places that will share your videos, and sometimes videos will get put, again, it will get put on the company's websites and things like that. So yeah, the more you can kind of share your video, the better. It's not something I do as much as maybe I should, but I like putting it out there, and what happens in my opinion. I don't overly kind of promote it. Again, that's growth for me that I could do. I'm just too lazy, if I'm honest. Pitfalls. There are a few. We've talked briefly about kind of using clips and stuff. Just don't overuse it. Be really careful with music. That's the one thing I try to avoid. If you are going to use clips, try to avoid ones that have music in them, because that is, they're on that like kind of carb on it, and that's when you'll get copyright strikes more, coming out your ass. Be careful of the rules of YouTube, because they do change. I got stuck with a warning that's permanently on my account, which means my reviews don't go on the recommended list. It's very annoying. So it's over about 18 months I've had this warning on my account, and since then my content never gets kind of put on the recommended, or like low down. It's very annoying. And that was because I shared in the video, I put a purchase link to the where they could get the DVD, and I got a warning saying you're taking business away from YouTube, and I got this permanent warning, and I said, it's like, can you take it off? It's been like 18 months. And I was like, no, it's on there permanently. I was like, Jesus. So I didn't lose like any monetization or anything like that, but yes, there are pitfalls, and sometimes you will get people trying to get your video taken down. Sometimes I have had it where I've had filmmakers who don't like the fact that I've given it a negative review try to have the video taken down on copyright grounds, even though that's not really what they're doing. They just don't want a negative review. They'll just go, oh, copyright. Again, if you're able to appeal it and kind of say it in a kind of a professional way, for the most part, I've got mine appeals overturned. Again, be a little bit careful, especially in regards to sex content. I reviewed a film called SX Tape. It was a horror film. It wasn't a pervy film. In fact, I don't even know it. I should have brought it out for this video. It's basically like a found footage movie called SX Tape, but that was obviously meant to be sex tape, and it's about this couple that are filming this sex tape in a kind of haunted hotel, and that video got like taken down, and I got like demonetized for 6 months because of it. So it's like, so be careful with kind of like saucy content. Even when we do kind of like the Third Window films, they're pink films, and Paul does them, and even though he doesn't show anything, just because it's kind of sexy content, it's like, nah, demonetized. We still do it, but I still want to have the videos out there. So I still put videos out. I mean, some people like really complain if their videos are demonetized. It's a shame, but it happens. I'll still put the videos out. But the worst case scenario is they get kind of taken down, and you get like a massive black mark on your account. So there are a couple of pitfalls. So just make yourself aware of the rules. And strangely, they seem to be a lot more lenient with the violence, but than with sex, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But there it is. Growing your channel. So as I've said, share, use social media. I don't use it as much as I should. I hate Instagram. I refuse to use it. I barely use my Facebook page. I do use Twitter on occasion, but not as much as maybe I should. But it is a good way of promoting your content. So yeah, but if you can get other places to share your stuff, then great. But just when people are asked, okay. So another thing you may not realise is when you get dislikes on videos, that helps your video. Don't worry about it. If you look at my most popular videos, they're some of the most disliked videos. So how YouTube works is it detects engagement. So a thumbs up or a thumbs down counts as engagement. A comment, a share, that all counts as engagement. So it doesn't matter if it's negative or comment. Even a troll comment actually helps your videos because it counts as engagement. So if your videos are getting a lot of thumbs up, it may be frustrating, but those people are actually helping your video. Although obviously clearly that's not their intent, but don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. And then we'll kind of wrap up with my things that maybe bug me a little bit about kind of what I don't like to see in reviews, what kind of turns me off about certain reviews. And some of this is kind of like a bit of a repeat of what I've said. So overlong intros, I'm not going to name names, but there is a reviewer that I'm subscribed to, and he had a 2-minute intro to his review, and I was like, do I say something? And I'm like, it's just ridiculous. An 8-minute video with a 2-minute intro. It's just like, yeah, I know, you might have spent work editing this video, but you've got to capture someone within really the first 60 seconds. And if your intro is 2 minutes long, this is why you are not getting many views, my friends. So as much as you might be impressed with your editing skills, cut those intros back. It's not even, you know what, I did say something, it wasn't a review, someone was doing like a horror pack, those things, those boxes, it was like, it was waffling for 8 minutes before even we got to the unboxing. I was like, man, 8 minutes and we haven't even started, and he's like, oh, telling me about all the kind of, how you get horror. You don't work for horror pack, don't worry about it. You don't need to kind of go through, horror pack is not paying you to promote their product, just show the product. We don't need an 8-minute kind of like, explainer about how horror pack works on every video. And I did comment, and I tried to be as polite as possible, and say, look, maybe you want to consider, not kind of waffling, or I didn't say that, not kind of going into too much. And he just, I noticed he just deleted my comment. So he's obviously, and this is what I'm going back to, taking criticism, sometimes, don't take it as a negative always. I was actually trying to help this guy, but he took it as I was trolling him, and I wasn't. I was trying to be as polite as I possibly could. I wasn't trolling him. I was just saying, maybe you want to consider making your video a little bit more concise. But that's not how he took it, but there you go. So, too long on the kind of plot synopsis, as I've already spoken, and again, I've seen videos where it's kind of like, again, an 8-minute video with 6 minutes of telling, going through the whole plot, and then, yeah, I kind of quite liked it. Brilliant. That's, so you've just told me, like, gone through the whole synopsis and then go, yeah, it was good. And again, there's the reviewers that I subscribe to now that still do that. I don't watch many of their reviews for that very reason. But I like to support people, but sometimes it's like I don't watch much of certain channels because I just think I don't need a kind of complete breakdown of the plot every time that lasts for more than half the video. For me personally, another thing, and again, this is only my opinions. All this stuff is my opinions. If you don't want to listen to it, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying this is wrong. This is just what I like personally. So don't, if I'm saying something and think, well, you're talking about me. I'm just saying this is what I like personally. If you want to continue doing it this way, continue doing it this way. It's just how what I like to watch or don't like to watch. But sometimes I feel some channels are more interested in pushing their brand than actually anything else. And I'm not really interested in channels like that, I'll be honest. Again, I'm not going to name names, but the channels out there I feel are more interested in kind of like having this kind of brand recognition kind of thing going on. Really doing that more than focusing on the actual film. I'm not interested. One thing I've kind of seen people do is having little cliques. And again, I don't think this is not necessarily negative, but I don't necessarily think it's particularly helpful. I've noticed there's little cliques in regards to the kind of the movie space, and it helps if you try and branch out. You know, don't stick within your clique. It's great to have like a kind of a core group of friends. I have it here, but don't kind of like be insular in that. You kind of want to expand. It's like when I try and do a tag video, I like to try and tag people who I don't normally tag. So I want to try and get other people involved and kind of reach out to kind of people who don't normally do it. A lot of the time they won't respond, I'll be honest. But, you know, I like to make the effort. So you know, if I have to sort of say, sometimes I think having these little cliques, although it can be fun, I think sometimes it can be detrimental because you end up kind of becoming a little bit of an island, and you only really have your kind of this kind of core little group, and what you really want to do is have kind of like the most welcoming kind of channel where you are talking to different people, not the same people every time. I always notice on tag videos, it's a lot of the time it's the same people that people tag, or on live chats, things like this. Kind of, if you can, again, this is just my opinion. I think it's ideal. The ideal situation is to have as finger as many different pies as you possibly can. And the final thing I'd say, and sometimes you'll get into kind of like beefs. I have with other channels. There'll be something that will upset one party or another. You have never seen a video on this channel of me naming and shaming anyone. I have never done it. It has been done to me, but I will not do it to other people. I think this is the opposite to collaborating, where people feel the need to tear down other channels to try and make themselves look better. I think it's appalling, if you want my honest opinion. I really can't, you know, as much as I say this is just my opinion, this is maybe one I feel a little bit more strongly on. You know, if you want to do that, great. But I honestly wouldn't expect really much to come from that on a positive. I've seen bigger channels do it, and again, I'm not naming names. There is a couple of larger, I say larger, they're kind of slightly bigger channels, horror channels that I've seen like air their dirty laundry about and slag each other off. And it's just like, if someone did it to you, as someone has done it to me, I've never responded. I've just never done anything about it. I've spoke to a couple of people who I've kind of got friendly with about it, but I have never actually done anything public about it, nor will I. And eventually that person has just gone away. But it does happen, and it is a shame that we kind of like, for whatever reason, people, and I know, for example, again, I don't want to name names, people who have contributed to this channel, one in particular, was driven off YouTube pretty much because of negativity from other channels. And as you know, people's mums used to say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. It doesn't help. I just don't think, I don't see any reason for it. Okay, this is the final thing I'll say about that. This is not my profession. I work full-time as a sales manager, but I like to conduct myself in a professional way. You won't see me slagging people off on this channel because I like to think that I conduct myself in a professional manner. The same way I don't rip into an actor anymore. Maybe I did a little bit with my early reviews. You know, it's just not professional. Even though this isn't my profession, it's just a good, polite way of kind of doing it. And if, you know, like I said, if you can't resolve your issues, just keep out of it, and eventually it will just kind of go away. So that is it. I honestly don't know if this has been helpful or helps you understand the channel a little bit. It's just kind of what I like. Actually, there's one other thing I would say. One other thing I say, but maybe what I don't really go in for, hyperbole. This kind of comes back to what I was saying about constructive criticism, positive or negative. There are channels out there that do a good job in a lot of ways, but a lot of their stuff is hyperbole. It's the greatest movie ever. It's the crappiest movie of the year. Is it though? Is it really? You know, it's just, and to be honest with you, you'll get views for that. I'm not gonna lie. When you have controversial comments, it's kind of sensationalizing, isn't it? It's like kind of when you get the newspaper, sensational headlines, and it will work. It's a crap movie rant. But to me, it's not helpful. It's not quality. Just slagging something off and saying lots of kind of explosive language about it if you're not telling the reasons why. And I also think sometimes when you kind of feel passionately about something, it's maybe you could need to step back. And like I said, it's easy to slag off a film, but it's like, is every aspect of that film truly that bad? You know, sometimes it might be, but explain why it is. Don't just say it's crap. Oh, this is the worst film I've seen all year. It's so boring. It's so, you know, if that's true, say it in the context of, give examples of what you mean, but be open to thinking, are there things that still were done to an okay standard, and give those aspects recognition, because there are very few films, and there are some, I will admit, but there are very few films that don't have at least some okay elements. So again, hyperbole is not something I really subscribe to, and there are reviewers out there that kind of go in for that. It's sensationalist. Some people love it, and I'm not saying that if people want to do that, then more power to you. But again, I am just saying how I like to approach things and what I like not to do, and that is one thing I like not to do. But it's, again, that's just kind of my opinion. If you disagree with it, tell me. You know, I honestly like to have an open discussion about these things. If there's things that you think I could do better, please tell me, you know, in a polite way preferably. But, you know, it's kind of, or was this helpful? You know, if one person has taken anything helpful from this video, then I feel like it was worthwhile. But I don't know if it is. Anyway, that's it. That's enough of me waffling on for however long this video has gone on for. Probably way too long. Anyway, thanks for watching, and bye for now.